Hi everybody, welcome back to PT Time with Tim. I'm Dr. Tim, a licensed physical therapist. Today I'm going to teach you the best physical therapy exercises and stretches to treat hip pain. More specifically, hip pain coming from the outside of your hip. Medically, it's known as hip bursitis or trochanteric bursitis. But first, here's my medical disclaimer. Hip bursitis is a compressive disorder. So what that means is that there's too much compression over the hip bursa, which is a fluid-filled sac located on the outside of your hip, right around that hip bone. So if you press around that hip bone and you feel a lot of pain or tenderness or achiness, then hip bursitis or trochanteric bursitis is really what's going on there. So in order to reduce the compression, there's three things that I tell people not to do. So number one, do not sleep on this side because you're spending several hours over the night laying on this side. That's compressing that hip bursa, and that's just going to continue to irritate that tissue. So do not sleep on that side, the painful side. If you sleep on the other side, put a pillow between your legs so that it keeps that painful side from kind of dropping over and stretching the tissue on the outside, because that will also irritate it. Number two, whenever standing in a store or if you're waiting in line somewhere, don't shift your weight onto the painful side. So don't kind of pooch your hip out to the side, because that's going to stretch that IT band, which is that long structure on the outside of the hip, and that stretch is going to compress the bursa up against the bone, because that bursa, the fluid-filled sac, sits underneath the IT band but over top of the bone. Number three, don't sit and cross your legs. So if you had pain on your right hip, you don't want to cross the right leg over the left leg, because again, that's going to stretch that tissue over the bursa, and that's going to compress that bursa even more. Our first flexibility exercise is going to use a stick massager. So you can find these online. You can also use a rolling pin. So your actual baking rolling pin works very similar to these. So whatever you have available can work. But basically, you're going to sit like I am here. I'm going to turn my leg slightly inward to expose the IT band on the outside of my leg. And if we remember, our IT band comes up from the knee on the outside of the thigh all the way up to the hip. And we're going to reduce any of the tightness in there. And there definitely will be. You will find some tight spots in there, some kind of knots, so to speak. But what you'll do is, I'm going to find my hip bone, which I can feel right here. I'm not going to roll over the hip bone, so that's very important. Do not roll over the hip bone, because we do not want to add any compression to the bursa area already. So I'm going to start below the hip bone, well below the hip bone. I'm going to press in and start to roll down the outside of my thigh along the IT band. And what I'm looking for is tight little speed bump areas. So if you hit a knot, it's going to feel like a lump. And that just means that it just has a lot of tightness or stiffness in that tissue there. And we just need to massage that area out. And we're just going to go all the way down towards the knee, stopping just above the knee, and then back up, and doing that for about 3 to 5 minutes to reduce the IT band tightness. Our next stretch is a hip external rotator stretch. So for this stretch, I'm going to lie on my back, and I'm going to take the painful leg. I'm going to put the foot on the back of the other knee. I'm going to take both hands. I'm going to grab one, or with one hand I'm going to grab the knee, and then the other hand I'm going to grab the shin. You really want to keep the knee pointing out past the shoulder. So I'm keeping my hip rotated outward, and as I pull evenly with both hands, I'm taking this leg towards my opposite shoulder. So I'm bringing this leg across my body, kind of up and across at the same time. And the purpose of the stretch is to stretch the outer hip muscles, because remember, this is a compressive disorder, so there's a lot of tightness in the outside of the hip that we need to reduce to help reduce that compression. So again, as I keep my knee pointing outward, I'm pulling across my body, and I should feel the stretch in my outer kind of glute area. I'll hold that for 30 seconds and do 3 repetitions. Now, position 2 is for an advancement of this exercise. So if you've been doing this one and the stretch has reduced in intensity over time and you're ready to advance it, what you'll do is you're gonna take both hands and interlock behind the opposite knee. You're gonna block the painful side with your elbow, actually. So if it was my right side, I'm gonna take my right elbow and block that leg to hold it so that it's pointing outward. And then I'm going to gently pull my left leg towards my chest. So it's actually bringing both legs up towards my chest at the same time, but I'm still blocking that right one with my right elbow. And again, this will just be an advancement, more intense stretch version, and you'll hold that for 30 seconds 3 times. Our next exercise is a single knee to chest stretch. For this one, my painful side is my right side, so I'm going to straighten my left knee all the way out. I'm going to reach down and grab my right knee and bring it up towards my chest. And so I'm going to feel a stretch in my glutes here on my buttock area. And so I'll pull up until I feel that moderate stretch in the bottom of the hip and hold that for 30 seconds and do 3 repetitions. Our first exercise is going to be bridging. So for bridging, I'm going to lie on my back with both knees bent up and my feet are shoulder width apart. You're going to squeeze your buttocks together. So just think about squeezing both buttocks at the same time, driving down through your feet and elevating your hips up off the table or the floor, wherever you're doing it at. So you're feeling those glutes squeezing. At the top, you might even feel a stretch in your quads. So if you feel something in the quads at the top, it's likely a stretch because you're tight in your hip flexors. But you're pausing at the top for just a second and then lowering back down, squeezing your glutes, raising your hips, pausing at the top, lowering back down. And we'll do that 10 repetitions for 3 sets. Now, one thing that I do commonly find is that patients will get some hamstring cramping as they're doing this. So if you do start to cramp in your hamstrings, the first thing that I'd ask you to do is walk your feet in closer to your butt. And then the second thing is pull your toes up so that you're pressing down through your heels when you lift. And what that does is that helps take the hamstrings out of it so that you can focus more on squeezing your glutes. So again, 3 sets of 10 for bridging. Our next strengthening exercise is the side-lying hip abduction exercise. And basically your hip abductors are the outer glute muscles, so they're kind of located right where my hand is here. And we need to strengthen these muscles because these ones most directly support the IT band in that outer hip area. So we definitely need to make them stronger. So I'm going to lie on my side here. My bottom leg is bent. My top leg is straight. I'm going to put my hand on my hip here. And as I raise this top leg up towards the ceiling, I'm actually lifting up and slightly back behind me. So I'm not just going straight up, but I'm actually lifting up and slightly back. And that's going to help you really isolate those hip abductors, again, right where my hand is on my outer hip. My toes are pointed straight ahead, so they're not rotated up towards the ceiling. If you do rotate them up, as you get tired, you're going to start to feel the hip flexors, which are the muscles that are actually in the front of the hip. We don't want to strengthen those ones. We're actually looking to hit only the outer hip muscles. So again, toes pointed straight ahead, lifting my leg up and slightly back, pausing, and then back down. And we'll just do 3 sets of 10 there. Our next strengthening exercise is a side-lying clamshell. So for this exercise, I'm lying on my side. I have both knees bent in kind of like a fetal position. So I'm going to put my hand on my hip and keep my feet together, but I'm going to raise my top knee towards the ceiling. So I'm kind of opening my top hip up towards the ceiling. As I raise my leg up, I'm squeezing my glutes, so I'm squeezing my buttock muscles because the buttock muscles are the ones driving this motion here. So as I do this exercise, if I'm doing it correctly, I should feel it in my upper kind of hip muscles. For the side-lying clamshell, we'll do 3 sets of 10 repetitions. For the advancement of the side-lying clamshell, I've taken a loop band, a loop resistance band, and placed it just above both of my knees so that as I do that clamshell, I've got some good resistance now. So if you find that the beginner clamshell without the band is just a little too easy and you're not getting enough hip work out of it, then you can add one of the resistance bands around your knees. If you don't have one of the loop bands, you can also use the long flat bands and then just tie it in a loop. For this one, 3 sets of 10 as well. Thanks for stopping by PT Time with Tim. Make sure to go check out my other videos as you continue on your pathway to living a pain-free, active, and adventurous lifestyle. Remember, at PT Time with Tim, we restore to explore.